Hey, what's up everyone? Ragey Golden Eagle here, having way too much fun as always, and holy shit is that definitely the truth right now. You may be asking yourselves, what's going on here? A surprise unscheduled video released right after recording? And on top of that, I'm also using my longtime favorite Sailor Saturn pick for it, the one that I reserve only for pointing and laughing at the most epic of usually self-inflicted disasters. Oh yeah, this shit is important and big enough for both of those. And on top of that, I'd also just end up embarrassing myself if I pre-recorded this and scheduled it for like a week or more in advance, cause this situation will be completely different in a week. Hell, probably even by the time I'm done recording this video, it will have changed. So with all that out of the way, just sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and listen. There will be nothing to watch this time around, no distractions. What's going on now? Well, in case you haven't been keeping up with Diversity in Comics and his Jawbreakers comic, the SJW Comic Book Pro gatekeepers have decided to go nuclear. Little bit of backstory first. For the better part of a year, they have been attacking him and saying he's a failed artist, and he needs to stop criticizing them and just put out his own book and let the customers decide. If he knows what makes a good comic like he claims he does, then this shouldn't be a problem, right? Well, he did just that. He got an all-star team together, and after a very successful Indiegogo campaign, at the moment they're almost at $250,000 after a month, he even went and got a publisher, Antarctic Press in this case, to go and put this book into local comic shops in addition to just having it be available from the online store, which pretty much is what his Indiegogo campaign has become at this point after finishing the proper campaign. He has been stating from the very beginning that he is avoiding a digital release entirely, and once the book is actually published and in stores that he'll call off the Indiegogo store because from the beginning he wanted to help out local comic shops. Now, I personally don't agree with this approach. If it were me, I'd fully embrace digital and online ordering. But hey, it's not my project, he could do what he wants with his, and I will admit it does prove that he really cares about local comic shops. But for those of you who just want the book with an exclusive Ethan Van Sciver cover only for the Indiegogo campaign, head over to the link in the description box below and pick up a copy. Even I got a copy! And with a few exceptions like Bonehead and Versus, I've mostly been almost exclusively reading manga in recent years. But Jawbreakers just looks good. This is the kind of comic that may very well save the Western comic industry. But all that out of the way, what thanks does he get for this? For him wanting to do things the traditional way in order to help out local comic shops and keep them in business. Well, first off, some comic shops colluded in a private Facebook group, those of you in Gamergate may be noticing a trend here, huh? To not only not stock his comic, but some cases to not even accept orders for it. But it gets even better. What happens next is the SJWs, they just went nuclear. As I just stated, after they pretty much challenged him to compete with them on the market all this time, they are now trying everything in their power to remove him from the market. SJW Marvel writer Mark Waid and his goof troop of fellow clowns launched a campaign of targeted harassment and bullying against Antarctic in order to force them to drop Jawbreakers under threat of getting blacklisted in the industry. He used his standing in the industry and his position at Marvel to threaten Antarctic and, specifically, all of its employees. He is that scared of Jawbreakers, of competition. But we're going to be getting to that towards the end, because that's actually pretty important, so saving the best for last. There is some silver lining in here. But first, what could he possibly do to threaten a small indie comic publisher? Well, it's no secret that most Marvel and DC artists, writers, editors, although maybe for editors it's not necessarily the case anymore, colorists, inkers, whatever, they got their start in small indie publishers like Antarctic. They do good on the indie scene, get themselves noticed, and then they get hired by DC or Marvel to work on big-name characters. So what would happen to all those aspiring comic book pros publishing their stuff through Antarctic Press if the gatekeepers decided to blacklist their current employer entirely? If they had that path blocked off permanently because they just so happen to work for someone who also employs another person that some butthurt SJWs don't like. Antarctic Press caved not just because the rabid SJWs are going after the owner's business, both as a comic publisher, which he does as a side job and his real job, but because all of his employees would have their future in comics destroyed if he didn't cave. They basically took all of his employees hostage. Though if you've been keeping track of Antarctic Press's Twitter account, they've been going around recently claiming that this is not the case at all. Despite both Mark Waid and Diversity in Comics pretty much saying it is. Yeah, on that topic, holy shit, I bet Diversity in Comics is wishing he recorded that phone call with the owner of Antarctic now. Man, this corporate suicide is going to be entertaining to watch. And on that topic of corporate suicide, I'm actually legitimately concerned for Antarctic right now. I'm not even sarcastically either, I'm honestly concerned. This quick about face that they've recently done and how they are taking criticisms reminds me a lot of someone who has a gun pointed to their head. At this point, it seems they must choose to either live on their knees or die on their feet. Well, not even die, really. They just need to outlast SJW Marvel. That aside, though, I am actually 100% in agreement with Diversity in Comics and how he handled the situation. I don't particularly blame Antarctic for this. Although, like I said, the situation is definitely developing and it may be completely different even by the time this video gets launched. But we'll see, it's going to be entertaining. Maybe I'll do a stream after this too. And the reason I understand this, though, is if any company ever wanted to partner with me for anything, I would actually show them my quote-unquote controversial content first, make sure they knew about it, and ask if they are okay being associated with someone like me. And if they still say yes, they're fine with it, then I'd have to tell them, yeah, that's fine, that's good, thank you. But I would have no hard feelings if you need to drop me to stay in business once the hate mob really starts attacking you. I prefer partnering with people who have spines, but if your employees get taken hostage, I'll understand. I am not gonna hate you for it. But, and this is a big but, pun maybe intended, just because Diversity in Comics has no hard feelings, though again, that may be changing now given Antarctic's recent change of heart, that doesn't mean the fans will agree. In the short term, they may need to do this in order to survive. But in the long term, SJW control of comics is quickly coming to an end with a bang, especially given Mark Waid's recent bullshit. After the SJW gatekeepers have been removed, the fans will remember which horse Antarctic chose to back, and they will act accordingly. So in the long term, this may not be the wisest decision for him. In the short term, if they want to continue to be a traditional publisher, I could see why they would cave. Especially if the retailers were in on the bullying and threatening to boycott the entire company. But with that out of the way, let's get to the important part here. What these SJW comic pros are doing with Jawbreakers and Antarctic Press, this is a last-ditch, desperate attempt to keep their jobs. They cannot allow Jawbreakers to succeed. They rely entirely on gatekeepers existing so they can stop anyone better than them from even entering the competition in the first place. Once comic book professionals are able to get around the gatekeepers and get in and they start outperforming the current gatekeepers, they're finished. And they know it. Companies will follow the money after all. So this here, I believe, is the silver lining. What we are witnessing is the SJW Comic Pros' final last-ditch desperate effort to stay relevant. This is why they are resorting to these types of self-destructive tactics. It's because they know they have no other choice. They are a cornered animal. They cannot allow Jawbreakers to be a success. There's nothing else they can do, well, other than just start actually making good comics and competing that way. But we know that's not an option for these talentless hacks. If it was, they would have been doing it from the start. And already there are even rumors going around that Cebulski is pissed as fuck at Mark Waid and has ordered him to shut down all of his social media, and most likely Waid's career at Marvel is done. And this part's important because if I were you guys, I'd be watching very closely how Cebulski and Marvel, and even Disney as a whole, responds to this whole fiasco, because it will determine if Marvel is even still worth saving in the first place. Here we have a big name employee of theirs using his standing and employer's name to threaten a competitor into dropping one of their creators who has proven to be very good competition in terms of sales numbers. This is not just a PR nightmare, but potentially a legal one as well. And from a fan perspective, I don't see them putting up with this either. Diversity in Comics has repeatedly stated that he personally is against the concept of boycotts, But at this point, I wouldn't fault anyone for dropping Marvel entirely until they get rid of Wade and everyone else who was involved with this targeted harassment and bullying of a competitor. They really fucked up this time. They really shot themselves in the head with this one. And yes, I meant to say head, not foot. Because what they've done here is way worse than their usual blunders. This is most likely the beginning of the end for them. And as usual, like every other time they try some shit like this, they ended up helping their competition. Diversity in Comics is now starting his own publishing house called Splato Comics, and will likely succeed spectacularly just like how Milo did when he got dropped by his publisher. And on top of that, he will, and hell already is, using all of this drama to get even more attention, even more money, possibly hundreds of thousands of more dollars in sales in the long run. Richard C. Meyer and the real comic fans out there, they will be the ones to come out on top here. And the important thing is, his publishing company won't be just for him. Imagine if all the talented professionals who were blacklisted from the current industry because of politics got to work at his publisher, and they were able to crank out great content to compete with the mediocre shit that Marvel has been putting out lately. It would completely turn the whole industry upside down. At that point, Marvel would have two choices. Either sputter and die, or get rid of their underperformers and put actual talent on their books and give the customers what they want. They have only been able to get away with putting out mediocre shit all this time because the gatekeepers have managed to keep the much better competition out. Well, except for manga anyway. Manga has been kicking their asses. But that's not what this video's about. The point is, this whole gatekeeping shit, this ends now. The creation of Splato Comics is the best chance real comic fans have to take back their industry and completely remove the gatekeepers, so don't sleep on this one. And especially given the recent events surrounding Antarctic Press, at this point I say it's time to go full-blown scorched earth. The old industry may well be too corrupted to save at this point. So you know what? Fine. Let's just burn it all to the ground and use the ashes to fertilize a new one with Splato Comics in the vanguard. That's all I gotta say, guys. Thanks for listening.